Hello, I'm Shannon with Modern Traditional Quilts. We're going to be starting our 2025 Charm Square Quilt Along today. Today is going to be our introductory video. It's going to talk you through how to sew half square triangles, get them to be 4.5 inches square so that we can make a 16-inch square so we can complete our sampler. Here I've got an example. Here's our test sample. And we're going to show you that while this is made with some older fabric lines, you can choose other fabric lines. In my shop and in my patterns, my fabric lines are swappable, which means you can swap for any charm square that you want. For example, this one is Dirty Meadows by Heather Briggs. This from Moda. This one might make a very, very nice sample. Be very simple, similar in color scheme to this quilt. For the quilt along, I'm going to be using the demonstration of Rosemary Cottage, which is done by Camille Roskelly for Moda Fabrics. And because I saw these and I just love them, I'm going to also use You and Me with Riley Blake. So I'm going to end up with 3 quilts of the same pattern done with this demonstration, but I think it's going to be fun at the end of the year. So for purchasing, you're going to need 2 charm packs of your favorite colors, 2 white charm packs. And so I have these 2 will make one really nice quilt top. And these 2 will also make one really nice quilt top. You also will need a pencil. And we're going to get going with our charm squares. One little side note. I've had friends and people tell me that, oh, I like the quilt, but maybe it's not my color scheme, or it's not my style, or the fabrics are too childish and I want something more mature. Maybe I'm making this for, a guy or something like that. You can swap and use other fabric lines. You don't have to use just the ones that I'm showing you. For example, if you are into the gray and white and black monochromatic housing style it's in right now, this one by Sable and Swan looks really great. Denim and Daisies by Fig Tree is also a really great fabric line. So go ahead and swap the color scheme that you like. All right, so let's get going on those half square triangles. Well, to my sewing table. Our first step is to mark our sewing lines. I like to use one of these acrylic engineering rulers. It's a right square triangle. I also have one of these for quilting as well, for cutting. It's a nice right angle. And I like to put my half square triangles in a way so that I can actually see an exact perfect 90-degree angle when I go through and mark these. You can use whatever you want to. You could very easily put this on your cutting mat, take your regular ruler, and draw it. But what I like to do, I want to give a word of caution, is a lot of fabric companies are going to market this nice blue Dritz Mark Be Gone marking pen. If you don't spray this with water first, it won't get removed and it could stain your fabrics. And so for piecing purposes, I mark my lines just using a regular good old graphite pencil. It's what Grandma used to use, and it works well for me. So what I'm going to do is take one of these whites, make sure I've got the wrong side up. I'm going to take my ruler, align my right squares together. I recommend doing this on a cutting mat just to make sure that you've got what you need to. Draw your perfect 45-degree line from corner to corner. And I'm only going to mark the whites. If you look, I've got a nice little gray line on there. I'm going to put my right sides together. Here I've got my printed fabric, and I'm going to line these up. When I've got a whole bunch of them lined and ready to go, I chain piece, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the drawn line. All right, so we're on my sewing machine now. I'm going to show you how to chain piece and make really, really nice half square triangles. So we've gone through, marked our diagonal line on all of our whites. And we've now paired them up with our fabric color of choice from our stack of fabrics. You want to use a 1/4 inch seam on your sewing machine. Okay. I happen to use a 1/4 inch foot on my machine, which is actually this exact perfect width that we need. If you don't have a 1/4 inch seam and you just have the width of a presser foot, it's going to make your seam allowances get off. And that's usually one of the biggest problems or complaints I hear from people that are learning how to sew and learning how to quilt is that their seam allowances are off. If you can go to your manufacturer and buy a 1/4 inch foot, or you can get a regular piece of tape. You can tape it to your bed, your sewing machine bed, and you can measure a 1/4 inch seam and follow that as a guideline. Either way, it will work just fine. So we're going to end up sewing about 8 fabric patches or half square triangles for each block. You can go ahead and match all of your fabrics if you want to, or you can just choose 8 at a time and start with 8 at a time and chain piece at a time. If you notice when I put this down, I'm using my 1/4 inch on my foot, and it is actually right on the inside of this line. So I'm going to sew down both sides. Here we've got seam 1. I've already layered these 2 wrong sides together, right sides together. Let's put in the next one. Chain piece all 8 of these. When you get to the end of the group that you want to sew, I like to just take it, quickly slide it around, rotate it 180 degrees, and now we're going to sew 1/4 inch away from the other side of our drawn line. Sometimes they flip over. It's okay. Flip it to the right side up and continue with your 1/4 inch seam. Now, if you've sewn 8 of these, you are ready to cut these in half and prepare them for your block. Or you can sew all of your packages together and then do 1 block at a time each month. All right, when you have all of your half square triangles sewn on both sides of the line, if you look closely, you can see I've got a line here and line here. I like to cut mine with scissors. You can use a rotary cutting board if you would like. I just simply go on that gray line, cut straight down, and I usually go through my entire collection this way, just cutting on the gray line. And then we'll get ready for pressing. Pressing is probably the most important thing. I've read a whole bunch of different things about pressing in a whole bunch of different historical documents and a whole bunch of different quilt patterns. And when it came down to it, I really like Fons and Porter's Love of Quilting's version of pressing the most. When my kids are little and I was a nursing mom, it just so happened that whenever my kids were hungry, Fons and Porter had a video on, so I would watch those on my local PBS station. If you'll notice, I like to put my dark side fabric up when I press. This is what Fons and Porter would teach you. You press it down first, and then you take the dark color and you peel it back. You do it that way every single time, it creates some interesting features that are going to create a nice heirloom longevity status for your quilt. Okay. One of the problems that you have is if you just press the seam open as you would like a regular piece of clothing, If you are in the middle of long arm quilting or something like that and that thread breaks, you automatically have a hole in your quilt. And no one wants that. If you press towards the light colors, you get a shadow effect. And so for this project, we want to press towards the dark colors. Some people also say to press in the direction of least bulk. That's important in the next steps when we look at the individual blocks. And as we do a different block each month, when that situation arises, we'll discuss it in the video. But for now, take your half square triangles, put your dark color on top, and peel your dark color back, and you'll have beautiful little squares. Next thing you want to do is square your triangle to be exactly 4.5 inches square. What that usually means is making sure you cut off these little dog ears. And if your frayed edge, your scissor edge is a little bit bigger, you can also trim that square as well. Okay, so let's look at some tips on squaring our quilt blocks. I actually take mine and put them right in the bottom of my mat, making sure that they line up at the 4.5 inch mark. I also have this 4.5 inch quilt in a day ruler. It's really nice. You can put that 4.5 inch line right on the center of your half square triangle, and you can see that the only thing I really need to trim off are these dog ears, which is really nice, which is why I like using these pre-cut fabrics to make our half square triangles. If you don't have one, you may also use, and it works really well, just use the corner of your regular old rotary color cutting ruler